Know by Heart is the newest title by the studio I Speak Lodge, best known to anyone in the audience for Pathologic, which you will play if you want me to stop breathing down your neck. Released in February 2022, this newest project is about reconnecting with friends in a small, isolated town, as events outside of your control test those bonds and force the military to intervene. Hey, wait a minute! Jokes aside, Know by Heart is a different game in themes, presentation and overall tone. It has a different director and a much smaller scope, be it in gameplay or narrative-wise. It's certainly not as prone to make some bastard with bad facial hair ask you what you think about its themes, so if you ever found IPL's games interesting but intimidating, this might be a good jumping in point to see how their games differ from the rest. In Pomnu, as it's called in native Russian, you play as Mikhail, or Mishka for short, a train station attendant in a nameless town in the middle of Russian nowhere. The kind of town that all the kids leave when they come of age, only to come back once in a blue moon to be amazed how nothing has changed in all those years, to the irritation of everyone that stayed there and don't like being reminded that their lives have been stagnant for decades. And Mishka was one of those left behind, his childhood and adulthood blending into one as the scenery around him never changed one bit. That's me, by the way. I'm the oblivious asshole that can't keep his mouth shut whenever visiting relatives and friends. Sorry. The presentation of the game is simple yet effective, with somber piano playing in the background as faceless models walk around the tiny town. It all has an atmosphere of melancholy to it. While Mishka might have stayed in town, the player is new to it, but it all rings very familiar, especially if you're from a Slavic country like myself. This might be my first time in the neighborhood, but I recognize all these blocks of flats, the one school in town, the empty streets and that one restaurant that didn't move or change in 20 years. I've been there many times in my childhood. I poured tea for a bunch of people at a birthday party of an elderly relative. I helped friends push a car down the road when it broke down. I called my mom only to get chewed up. I didn't do it often enough despite the fact she didn't pick up the last 5 times. And I looked at myself in a mirror. That's right, fully functional mirrors, eat your hearts out, AAA devs, yeah! The plot kicks off with 2 inciting events. One, there was some commotion in an apartment next door, which turns out to be the alcoholic neighbor forgetting the identities of his children, effectively making them homeless. 2, the people from Mishka's school posse come back to town for various reasons. Most notably Asha, his old flame, whom he very much still has feelings for, but he regrets never working up the courage to confess to her. They didn't drift apart per se, the entire group is still very tightly knit on an emotional level, it's just that the fabric they weaved together got stretched to its limits. So he has to juggle those feelings, trying to help his neighbor's kids somewhat, his best friend's mom's birthday, his day job and his self-destructive tendency to overthink everything. Which I can't relate to personally, but boy can like 90% of my friend circles apparently. As both titles imply, it's about memory. Most of the gameplay is walking around town and having the characters talk about bits of their childhoods tied to a specific point in town or assembling photographs with voiceover. Some uncharitable interpretations might say that this game is a walking sim, and they would be right. The main mode of interaction here is walking, and there is no failure state. Even if you screw up things that could be called action scenes, the plot just rolls forward, accounting for that failure. But at the same time, drawing from my own interpretation of why I find those games boring, hint hint, watch my video, hint, I found the presentation of Know by Heart pretty compelling. Because those memories and ruminations center around characters that are present and discussing those events. It's not just a memory lane tour with nothing at the end, it's a direct dialogue between those characters about why they cherish those memories and how they inform their current relationship. There's more meat on the skeletal structure of a story, especially as not all memories are shared by the entire group. But that makes it sound gloomy, whereas most of these memories are cheerful and funny, even if in a wow, we were so fucking stupid little children, we almost died back then way sometimes. It's not just ruminations of fictional people, it has a heart and a point to it. The entire game took me 5 hours to beat, so it's somewhat impossible to discuss the core of it without delving into spoilers. So if you'd rather avoid that, here are some final notes before you can bow out of the video. It's available on Steam, Switch, PS4 and Xbox One. Costs the equivalent of $20 or so. Expect a visual novel-esque vibe to it, just chill in the melancholy of it. Probably best enjoyed in autumn, as the game takes place around the time that makes leaves fall off trees. I wholeheartedly recommend it. It might not be a paradigm shift in games of any kind, but it made me feel things, and I will probably return to it someday to see how differently the events can pan out. But also, be aware I can't divorce my feelings about it from personal circumstances like my nationality, which obviously can differ for you. Like, there is so much more warmth to calling someone Miszka, or Misiek if I were to transplant the same idea into Polish, than Mikey. And I really can't explain this in English in a way that won't force me to get a linguistics degree halfway through the explanation. And the train leaves the spoiler-free station 3, 2, 1, choo-choo. Turns out the memory thing is somehow contagious. It's not just Mishka's asshole neighbor, but everyone around him. A nice elderly lady forgets about her own son. His friends forget about him. People who were thick as thieves and risked lives for each other moments prior don't recognize each other. It's not widespread dementia, it's selectively making you forget about people, seemingly starting with those you hold closest to your heart, slowly but surely leaving you surrounded by strangers. The military seems aware of what is causing this, and that's why they rolled into town to mandate population-wide tests. The thing is, there is no solution to this. There is no mystery of discovering the source, no heroic resolve making Mishka immune, no army working with the ragtag bunch of young adults to cure it. There's just it happening and people preparing for it. You never find out why or when, you just gotta brace for it and deal with it. People around town have their own ways of coping, like trying to make a mind map of relations to let everyone remember, but nothing can serve as a full solution. At the end of the game, even portraits of people in dialogues are faceless, turning the people you just spent 5 hours getting to know into complete strangers. And you just have to deal with that in one way or another. And towards the game's end, the bright blue bubbles of memories are replaced with black ones, as our cast struggles to remember what's so special about that place or that moment in their pasts. I'd like to disclose up front that if anyone finds this approach fatalistic, I will break their kneecaps. Look, I enjoy a power fantasy and a tale of winning against impossible odds as much as anyone else, but at the same time, viewing the world purely through the lens of battles that can be won tends to paint everything but having your way as a failure. But to be engulfed in something bigger than you is not a failure. At worst, it's a tragedy. Everyone did the best they could and worked together to not leave anyone stranded or alone, but the memory loss was ultimately inevitable. And some of it is positive. Do we really need to remind this cranky old man that everyone had enough of him? Or is it better to let him start fresh with everyone in the town? Obviously the latter. But it still feels a bit dirty, like using someone losing their wallet as a pretext to give them a gift. And when I said I knew this town by heart before, I meant it. I'm very much a city boy, at least by the standards of Eastern Poland. But when I was young, I visited my cousins in a much smaller town oh so often. I could tell you everything about it. The layout of the streets, the defunct locomotive serving as some kind of weird statue and how I tried to hide a packet of chips in its smokestack once. That one dinky shop, the overgrown football field, all the bus stops, the slide I burned my ass on one summer, the snow wall we built the following winter for a snowball fight, the nest of ants I found under one tree and squatted for hours next to trying to feed them a sandwich. But faces or names of anyone other than my cousins and aunts elude me. Like, you could drop me on the outskirts of that tiny town and I would find my way to the exact apartment where I spent seemingly half of my weekends as a child. But if you showed me photos of things I did outside of it, I would have no clue who was with me in those photos. And that's pretty scary to realize. But at the same time, what can you do? My life moved forward, as has theirs. I haven't been to that town in 15 years, as my cousins moved to United States to find a better life there, and I lost any reason to even consider getting on that hour-long bus drive. And none of this crossed my mind, until now. So that's Snow by Heart. A small game project that in no way shook my world, but it made me think of things I thought I'd have forgotten, and at the same time made me realize how big of a chunk of my life is missing from my memory. And that counts for something. Now, in my restless dreams, I see that town, Czarna Białostocka. And I know that name means absolutely nothing to you, a location distant and full of people you don't know, but it does mean something for me, even if I know just as many people there as you do. And it makes me think about the value of remembering the fact I don't remember someone, or in fact many someones. Hey, that's a pretty short video even by my channel standards, but this game is really to the point. In case you're new here, hi, I'm Tidu, I make videos about obscure stuff like this mostly. Another video is coming, not sure if it's still in April or in May, but it is. As usual, huge thanks to my wonderful Patreon supporters now visible on the screen. They let all these ideas become more than just unspoken feelings. See you next time, someday, somewhere, in a pretty blatantly foreshadowed place.